Okay, good evening. Welcome to the May 24th Board of Education meeting. We have 6 board members present, 1 absent. And the board has been in closed session since 6 o'clock tonight for collective negotiation for matters between the district and its employees, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, litigation when an action against or affecting the district has been filed or is pending before a court or administrative tribunal, the purchase or lease of real property for the use of the district, the setting of a price for sale or lease of property owned by the district, and approval of April 26, 2016 and May 10, 2016 closed session minutes. Let's rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public comments is next, and we ask for public comments to state your name and speak for up to 3 minutes. First name is Christine Sevilla.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Christine Sevilla, and my daughter Genevieve Sevilla is a District 205 student. She just completed her senior year at York High School, where she received special education. She had been in an educational program called TLS, which stands for Transition Life Skills, and she will be attending the district's special education transition program for the next 4 years. She is here with me this evening, and I'm very proud of her. As my daughter exits York, we look ahead to the next chapter for her education. I would like to take time and provide my thoughts about the direction I would like to see York Community High School head toward for all those who follow in our footsteps. I will tell you about the hopes and dreams I have for our students receiving special education services at York. I dream of visibility, thoughtful representation, and access for special education students at York High School to be the norm and not the exception. I dream of a York High School wherein student academic recognition, special education students who receive their education at York in self-contained or instructional classrooms can be recognized for their academic accomplishments, leadership, ability to inspire others, and perseverance to excel despite great challenges. I dream they are called by name to come up to the stage to receive an award on senior award night along with their non-disabled peers, and where the Department of Special Education, which is their primary department, is visible and has an equal seat at the awards table, instead of the special education department being hidden and invisible on senior awards night and not providing our community an opportunity to recognize and celebrate students for their achievements and greatness under the special education department. I dream of York, where in the important realm of vocational training, community training is available beginning freshman year. As by law, special ed students have turned 14 and a half and have a transition plan, and it includes vocation. It has been developed and it's in play. I dream of a full-time special education vocational teaching position where task strips for steps on a job is the norm and not the exception, where students' experiences begin work training in the community early on in high school, promoting successful student outcomes in the area of employment, where documents are sent home with students about vocational practices, so there is continuity between the school and home environments, and parents are included in what their students are learning and need to do about vocation. Instead of waiting to begin community real-world vocation practice and experiences until junior year at the earliest, instead of irrelevant movie watching, instead of doing custodial work, cleaning the hallway windows, cleaning the teacher's lounge, and much more, when non-disabled peers do nothing of the sort. Instead of perpetuating the perception that individuals with intellectual disabilities are best suited for custodial work in front of their York non-disabled peers and teachers. I dream of a York where in athletics, the Special Olympics program called Unified Sports, in which special education athletes play and compete with mixed teams, unifying them with their non-disabled peer athletes, is offered and celebrated. Instead of a lengthy and laborious process to have one single sport of special education made available to high school athletes with disabilities, long after all the other high schools in our conference have had these programs up and running and well supported by their entire school community. I dream of York, where in the school yearbook, Special Olympics and Unified Sports has images and a record of student-athlete activities and successes, and school pride is embraced and recognized and visible, instead of being forgotten and left out for continuous years where special ed students cannot find themselves or their team in the yearbook pages. I dream of York, where in social clubs, a real Best Buddies club exists and has teacher sponsors eagerly supporting the club and buddies developing real friendships following a model designed and based on commitment and developing student leadership skills, instead of an outdated social club with an unrecognizable name that cannot find teacher sponsors year after year and that does not include students with disabilities in the planning of the club's activities, does not promote and foster individual meaningful friendships, a club that feels like a second-rate afterthought. I dream of York, where during an assembly, special education students are sitting amongst their non-disabled peers, such as in a pep rally when junior and senior classes sit together in a show of school and class spirit, where during lunch period, special education students are sitting with their non-disabled peers or their peer buddies from the Best Buddies Club, instead of being brought in and directed to sit with a large group of special ed students, perpetuating the perception that students with intellectual differences do not belong with their non-disabled peers, that there's a special table or a special section in the bleachers for them. At the last board meeting, many York students were presented with recognition and proclamations for their year-end achievement. I see in the agenda this evening that a number of proclamations are being made. I celebrate the achievement of these students and I feel proud of them. Within all the recognition and speeches in the last board meeting, I heard the terms enriched curriculum, opportunities for excellence, and we look to industry standards and best practices. I have a dream that these concepts would be universally applied to all York students. When I attended the commencement ceremony last week, it was said by a board member that York is one of the great high schools in the United States. In many ways, I agree with that statement. There are a lot of reasons for pride at York. But with that being said, it pains me greatly to say special education at York is not on par with the excellence of general education. Special education at York is not even on par with special education at other area high schools. The dreams I have for special education at York are not out of our reach. It is what other great high schools in the United States are doing. I, along with many parents of special ed students, eagerly anticipate the arrival of the new York principal, Erin DeLuga, and the new York assistant principal of students, Melissa De La Rosa. We see a great opportunity before us to give meaningful thought and a fresh look at special education within York and the district transition program. There is an opportunity to complete the circle of educational greatness at York by holding special education to the same high standards we have for general education. It can happen with awareness, vision, commitment, collaboration, and leadership. Educator Tori Dunlop said in a TEDx talk, "I believe that a reason why, as a society, we have not embraced children with disabilities as full participants in our schools and communities is the limitation of our own mental models around disability. I am hopeful that things will change regarding the culture of special education at York. Visibility, thoughtful representation, and access must be a part of that discussion and initiative." Thank you.
Are there any other public comments tonight? Okay. Oh, should come onto the podium.
Hi, my name is Robin Bello. I have a 3rd grader and a 6th grader in District 205. I'm very concerned with the news of possibly extending the late start to start even later in the day, specifically with regards to middle school students. Obviously, this is going to affect working parents, which is a big percentage of this community. It is very, very difficult to find help before school. It is much easier to find help after school. So if this is something that you are considering, I would encourage you to to not do a late start, but actually have an early dismissal. Because again, it is much easier for working parents to find assistance later in the day. I am concerned with even increasing the time for this curriculum development. As my 6th grader has reported to me on many occasions, when there's an assembly, when the days are shortened by any means, unfortunately the teachers are unable to get in everything they had planned that day. So what happens is they tell them, okay, wait, you know what? Just more homework for you later on. And there's already so much homework that these middle schoolers are getting. It's just untenable at this point. And so to add to decrease the amount of hours in the day, decreasing the actual classes or the class times is going to create more homework for the students later that evening. I would totally encourage having these curriculum planning sessions for the teachers if I saw that the teachers were actually implementing what they're learning in these in-service days. Now, that being said, there are teachers out there that are doing creative, innovative types of things that we're seeing. But I can tell you, the amount of worksheets that my son gets that have the copyright date in the 1970s is staggering. So unfortunately, what is happening during these sessions, the teachers are not implementing it in the classroom. So I would encourage you to keep the late starts where they are and not to increase them at this point. Thank you.
Are there other public comments? Okay, come on.
Hello, my name is Jeannie Turk. I have 2 children currently at Hawthorne Elementary, one a 3rd grader, one a 1st grader, and then I have an incoming kindergartner next year. I'd also like to speak in opposition to extending the late start morning to 9:45. I would ask the board to also consider an early dismissal. Having my kids at the Y program for the past couple of years, I know that the Y would be able to accommodate an early start or an early dismissal a lot earlier than they would be able to accommodate any sort of early morning program. It's very difficult to find childcare in the morning. It's a lot easier to find it in the afternoon. I furthermore know that some other school districts, when they do offer an early or a late start, they will offer complimentary childcare for working parents. And I think that if the board is unable to look at a early dismissal, then I would encourage the board to also look at providing childcare for working parents. I've been told that other school districts, they don't use the rec station park district system. They will hire a sub and have that sub provide that care in the gym. So again, late start would be extending the late start would be a big inconvenience to working parents, and I ask that you consider the alternatives I suggested. Thank you.
Are there other public comments tonight?
Hi, my name is Dave Maddox. We lived in Elmhurst for 7 years, have 2 kids. Just wanted to thank you for your service, for what you guys are doing. Really appreciate what's going on in District 205. As a parent, I do want to just sort of bring to your attention my concern for you and the difficult position that you're in as it relates to the letter from the Department of Justice on May 13th. And the nature of that letter, and I think the difficult position that that has put you all in, just in terms of what it's mandating, what it may be potentially withholding in terms of federal funds. And I just see that as a really difficult, almost impossible situation for each of you. I just wanted to sort of encourage you that I have tried to put myself in your shoes, to try to think through this issue, concern for those in need, which is a tremendous concern, concern for the protection as it relates to carrying out this for the youngest and most vulnerable of those in our school systems. And I just wanted to encourage you and thank you for having this time and let you know that I'm praying for you guys just as you sort of sort through this difficult issue, and would be encouraged if you could sort of communicate or let us know how you may be proceeding. I know it's very early with this letter, but perhaps over the summer as things start to sort of gel and you can react to it. But thank you very much for your service and what you guys are doing.
Anyone else for public comments? Okay, hearing none, we'll move to presentations. Our first presentation is Illinois Economic Challenge. We have Jessica Weldon and Tamara Carl. Thanks.
Hello. You have to stand right in the front.
They'll perform a dance
It's like
also.
just to make you feel a little bit more uncomfortable, right? All right. Good evening, everyone. My name's Jessica Weldon. I'm Division Chair of Research and Social Sciences at York High School.
I'm Tamara Carl. I'm an AP Macroeconomics teacher, AP Microeconomics teacher, and American Government teacher.
And also I teach the micro and macro as well for the last 8 years at York High School. So it is really my honor and privilege tonight to introduce you to these amazing young men, and we're missing one, Frank Luce. So I want to tell you a little bit about the program. So the Economics Challenge is a prestigious competition where only students that have taken an AP, IB, or honors level economics course are eligible to participate in this competition. These students represent some of the highest achieving students in the country. These students scored in the top 10 teams of all students in Illinois in order to compete at the state finals. This competition forces students to demonstrate a deep level of knowledge and understanding of college-level micro and macroeconomics. The intensity of the competition is really difficult to replicate in this setting. They might be feeling it right now in front of everyone. But it is so exciting when you're down there to see the intensity of these future young professionals as they work collaboratively to problem solve and under pressure in a way that you might feel in a state finals of an athletic competition. You see it in academics. The final round of the competition is the buzzer round between two finalists in front of a panel of prestigious judges. It is truly a nerve-wracking and nail-biting experience. There are at least 50 people in the audience watching and listening to every word they said. York's first place team, consisting of John Fetcher, if you want to wave, there you go, Jason Kentra, Frank Luce is not here, and Flanagan Welder, handled this with professional ease and focus. They worked together as a team and encouraged each other when a mistake was made. They were quick to the buzzer and eloquent in their answers. After winning the state competition, they spent a great deal of time preparing as a group to learn as much as possible about current event and general economic topics that were not part of the AP curriculum to prepare them for the national semifinals exam. It is truly an accomplishment that they have placed 19th in the country overall. So if you want to give them a round of applause. I also want to mention that after the competition, they had an opportunity to submit a video that was during the week of AP exams, which everyone in the country is under that pressure during AP exams. And they submitted that video. And the whole idea of the video was to kind of create a video that represented what the competition meant to them. And they also took first place nationally in that competition. So they received a monetary award for that as well. So obviously a very talented group. We'd also like to mention and honor our third place team. I don't believe any of them are able to make it tonight. They're all graduating seniors. But this team, Jack Anderson, Brandon Parr, Peter Salick, and Brendan McGovern, took third place this year. And it is definitely a huge accomplishment for them because this is the second year in a row that that same team competed in this competition at the Illinois State Finals. They're a special group in the fact that they actually took the class as juniors, and last year they were so determined that they would come back and do it again, and they really did. And so they reviewed on their own, and I just feel like it's an amazing demonstration of the depth of their knowledge and how well they learn the material and how prepared they will be. So congratulations to all of you. I am so proud to have been a part of this program over the years, so thank you. Do you want us to introduce your own challenge now? Or?
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Congratulations. I think our community has a lot to be proud of. And these kids wouldn't be in the place they're in without their instructors. So if I can have a round of applause. I think every high school student should have your level of knowledge, your level of rigor in economics. It's a group of knowledge that will serve you well throughout your entire life. You can tell what may work, what may not, when politicians are lying, and when they're promising too much. But I just want to say we're very proud of you, and I have a proclamation to read. So just a few more minutes of standing up here in front of a big crowd. Whereas the Illinois Economic Challenge is a competition for teams of high school students in which they test their knowledge of economics, of which 498 Illinois students participated in the online preliminary round of competition in March, with 10 teams qualifying for the state event. And whereas on April 6th, 2016, at the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, 40 high school students competed in the championship title, concluding with York Community High School earning first place in the 2016 Illinois Economics Challenge State Finals, a program of Econ, Illinois. And whereas the championship event consisted of individual and team written tests, a critical thinking activity that required addressing an economic scenario and advising a finance sector volunteer judge on how to address the problems, and the final quiz bowl round of competition, resulting in York outscoring second place Hinsdale South High School. And whereas the York first place team of John Fleshner, Jason Kentra, Frank Luce, and Flanagan Walder advanced to the national semifinals round of competition, held as an online proctored test on April 26, 2016, along with other state finalists across the country, with York finishing in 19th place in the nation. And whereas a second York team, consisting of Jack Anderson, Brendan McGovern, Brandon Parr, and Peter Salick, finished third place. And whereas these accomplishments bring pride and prestige to York Community High School, to District 205, and to our community, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit District 205 express congratulations to these students, their parents, and the team coaches Jessica Weldon, Division Chair of Research and Social Studies, and Tamara Carl, Advanced Placement Micro, Advanced Placement Macroeconomics, and American Government teacher for these outstanding accomplishments. Congratulations. You guys want to put your triggers? Thank you very much. Come on. No, you got it. You too as well. You got it.
We got another one. We got another one to present.
Oh, that's right. So you just do the circle.
Yeah, we'll do it again.
It's a good day for economics. So we have another competition that we would like to announce, and that is the Euro Challenge. It was the Midwest regional and then national competition. And so for that,
Let's bring them up.
Matt Dardick, Jason Kentra, Megan Quinn, and Luke Rosmus could please come up. And Matt Anderson. Sorry, Matt. 3. Jason might look familiar, right?
I'm busy.
Yep. The Euro Challenge consists of multiple competitions where a team of 3 to 5 students represent their regions in advanced economic analysis of implementation of fiscal and monetary policies to solve problems in the Euro area and specifically with the country within the European Union. What's so special about this competition is that in our AP economics courses, we do not delve into the European Union. And so while we talk about fiscal and monetary policy, it was the students who themselves were the ones that invested in looking into the European Union and the things that were involved with that country. Matt Anderson, Matt Dardick, Jason Kentra, Megan Quinn, and Luke Rosmus are 5 York students who took on the Euro Challenge with dedication and energy. They represented York High School to its fullest potential. Prior to the first round of competition, they met themselves on weekends and outside of school to discuss and put together fiscal policy solutions of how to solve Germany's economic problems. We had just started learning about fiscal and monetary policy in class, and so it was really themselves that took it to the next level, to be able to learn about Germany. Their dedication for grasping the concepts and being able to apply them to a presentation was impressive. For the first round, we went down to the Chicago Fed, and they gave their presentation in front of a panel of economists where they gave the fiscal policy solution for how to solve Germany's problems. They came out as the first place winners for the regional competition. But one of the things that really stood out that day was that they went up to one of the judges to ask what it was that they could do better for the next round of competition. And so they listened and they went back and they reflected on that. As we delved further into the competition and what the national semifinals was about, we looked at one another and we had to make a decision. And based upon the judges, it was either we need to make some changes or we can go to New York City for the national competition at the New York Fed with how we represented ourselves in the first round. And before I even finished the sentence, they said, we've already decided that we're going to take what the judge said and we're going to make it even better. They spent countless days, nights, and every 5th period during lunch going over and evaluating their presentation. They traveled to University of Illinois, Chicago, and met with their Fed Challenge team and gave their presentation to college students where they had this high-level conversation of economics and reflected upon what they had to say, and in a week turned it around for one fabulous presentation. We went to New York City, where we competed against 25 other teams, and the feedback from the judges was incredible. The economic knowledge that they presented was what top economists today would talk about of how to solve problems in the European Union. In addition to the dedication and effort that the students put forward, the parents were incredible in their support for this adventure. Moms went out and got ties so that we could represent the flag of Germany. We had pins, we had a dress to be able to meet the flag needs also. We had the parents on a texting, a group texting, and when the New York Fed took all our phones away and we weren't allowed to use them, they waited in suspense, waiting to hear exactly how the results went. That's what makes District 205 so special, is not only is it about the students and the dedication and the support that they give, but the parents also, for all that you do to make this a truly remarkable experience for everyone involved. Not only did you make a big impression with the judges, and the feedback that we got from them indicates that, but you put York High School on the map as a school to be competed with next year and for years to come for the European Challenge and the national level. Job well done. Good job.
Seems like every 2 weeks I come up here and I meet another group of kids that put York on the map again. And there is room always for more and more recognition, because this is an amazing community that produces excellent kids with the help of amazing staff and wonderful families. So I'm going to read the proclamation here. Whereas the Euro Challenge is a program of the delegation of the European Union to the United States that supports this innovative academic competition to encourage American students to learn more about the European Union and its single currency. And whereas on March 21st, 2016, the Euro Challenge Midwest Regional Competition took place at the Chicago Federal Reserve Bank, hosted by the Federal Reserve Bank of Chicago, Indiana University, and University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, comprised of teams representing Wisconsin, Iowa, Indiana, Ohio, and Kentucky, with student teams either in 9th or 10th grade. And whereas the York team chose the challenge of presenting a 15-minute presentation of Germany's high unemployment rate and using fiscal policy to stimulate economic growth in front of a panel of judges from the Federal Reserve of Chicago and the University of Illinois at Chicago's Center of Economic Education. And whereas the York team, consisting of high school sophomores Matthew Anderson, Matthew Dardick, Jason Kentra, Megan Quinn, and Luke Rosmus, emerged in first place in the Midwest Regional Challenge. And whereas the Midwest win qualified the team for the semifinal round of the National Challenge at the New York Federal Reserve Bank, competing against 10 regions across the country, with a total of 25 teams competing. And whereas while the York team did not move on to the final round, the team received very positive feedback, such as demonstrated knowledge beyond the presentation, research was well done, in depth, and good use of additional knowledge to support answers. And whereas this accomplishment brings pride and prestige to York Community High School, to District 205, and to our community. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 express congratulations to these students, their parents, the team coaches Jessica Weldon, Division Chair Research and Social Sciences Tamara Carl, Advanced Placement Micro, Advanced Placement Macro, and American Government teacher for this outstanding accomplishment. Thank you very much.
Our next recognition is the Illinois Council of Teachers of Mathematics State Math Contest. Linda Latti's here to present.
There you go. Good evening. I'm Linda Lottie. This is Nancy Mordini. We coach the York math team. Serena Briggs is also a coach. She could not be with us tonight. A couple weekends ago, first Saturday in May, 6 o'clock in the morning, 36 people get on a bus, donuts, pillows, math problems, calculators. And we travel down to Champaign. On I-57, you see bus after yellow bus after yellow bus after yellow bus, because this is the state math team championship. You have to win your regional to get there. And our entire team won each of their contests this year in February, so we had a bus full. It was great. We are here tonight to honor our seniors. We have 3 of the 7 with us tonight, and the competition that we are honoring is the written competition. It's a little bit, I'm sure you would say, dry. It's like a 1-hour final exam. So I thought you can pull your calculator out if you want. I looked through the contest this afternoon and I thought I'm going to throw you the softball question. So there's 20 questions, and one of them was this. Determine the number of years needed for a sum of money to triple at 5.5% interest compounded continuously. Express your answer as a decimal rounded to 4 significant digits. I'll let you work on that while I talk. But you got to do 19 more of these in topics like coordinate geometry, probability, conics, statistics, trig, polar functions in an hour. And these guys love it, and they were amazing. But that's because they worked all year. We call ourselves mathletes for a reason. We work and practice like athletes. Never have I seen a team, I've coached seniors for many years, that were as competitive but cooperative and consistent as this team, and you'll see why in a minute. They loved it. They were at school, after school, twice a week for most of the year, but you'd see them in the math lab, you'd see them on the internet, anytime they had a lunch period doing math problems for these contests. It was just so cool. So they were rewarded. These guys came in 3rd out of 57 teams in Division 4A, and I want to read you some of the teams they bested. IMSA, Walter Payton, Whitney Young, New Trier, Naperville Central, Hinsdale, Glenbrook South, and the team who won it all, Naperville North. The seniors beat their seniors. So how do you get ready for this? You compete all year. We also compete in a organization I'll refer to as NISML. So as I introduce these guys, I'm going to tell you just really briefly about their accomplishments there all year, because it's been an amazing year. But first, I was laughing at the prior presentation, the 4 guys who couldn't be here. Jack Anderson, Brennan McGovern, Brandon Parr, and Johan Dragunov. I mean, think about it. Not only are they doing economics, they are doing mathematics and getting 3rd in state. Amazing accomplishments by them. But in front of us, we have 3 of the 4 placement winners. They determined the 3rd place victory for our team. First off, we have Luke Videkas. What a competitor. You know, he just improved all year. The more I came in to do this, I'd see him every practice. I think I truly ran out of problems for him to do. He was also on our junior-senior relay team that came in the top 10. He had outstanding scores all year in our NISML competition, and he has been such a consistent competitor. Just amazing. Eric Cummings was also in our top 10 on the junior-senior relay team, as well as doing this third-place finish. He's an all-star ARML competitor. That's another set of competitions that competes internationally. He was a high scorer for NISML, and he had 2 perfect papers to toss off as well during the year. And finally, Lucas Goff. He's been our team captain, and he's just been a rock. He's always been there for us. He takes responsibility. He has mentored the younger kids. He was on a 2-person team as well as this written team, and he's just always working. And again, a perfect paper during the year. When these guys were freshmen, our math team coaching staff made a commitment to get more students down to state. And in order to do that, we had to win regionals. So we upped the number of practices, and these guys, it didn't take long to get a fire set under them. For 4 years, they've been among the most consistent players I've ever seen. It's going to be a real tough goodbye. It has been a tough goodbye because you have opened the door. You are the first team to ever get a first, second, or third place at state that I know of. And I researched back for York Math for about 35 years and couldn't find anything. So congratulations, you've pushed that, you've broken through that ceiling, and we hope that you will set that precedent for many years to come. It's been a blast. We congratulate you, and we wish you continued mathematical success. Bravo in all that you do.
Thank you so much. I heard a couple of terms there that I just want to reiterate. The mathletes. And from what I understand, they were definitely mathletes. The relay teams, outstanding. But the one point I want to make here that I also heard was the talking about breaking through ceilings. And that is what excellent schools do. They always continue to push the envelope and move forward. And that's what we're looking to do. We want to continue to break through ceilings. And those areas where we have not progressed as we have or want to, that's another opportunity for us. So that's what we're looking forward to do as all great schools continue to progress forward. The proclamation. Whereas the purpose of the Illinois Council of Teachers of Mathematics State Math Contest is to recognize outstanding mathematical achievement, encourage independent study, stimulate interest in mathematics, and provide a wholesome meeting ground for students and teachers of mathematics through academic competition. And whereas the 2016 Illinois Council of Teachers of Mathematics State Math Contest Finals was held May 7, 2016 at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign campus when York Community High School senior team members Jack Anderson, Eric Cummings, Ian Dragonoff, Lucas Goff, Brennan McGovern, Brandon Parr, and Luke Vadekis succeeded in leading the team to a third-place finish in the contest over a field of 35 teams in Division 4AA, the most competitive division at the contest, with a team score that bettered more than a dozen perennial powerhouse teams, and we heard those perennial powerhouse teams, across the Chicago area. And whereas these students have collaborated with, as well as competed against, each other and mentored younger team members, and whereas this accomplishment brings pride and prestige to York Community High School, to District 205, and to the community, now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education and Administration of Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 expresses congratulations to these students, their parents, Susan Brown, Mathematics Department Chair, as well as the coaches, Serena Briggs, Linda Lottie, Nancy Mordini, for this outstanding accomplishment. Congratulations.
Our next presentation is the Churchville logo presentation.
Hello, good evening. I am Brenton Russo, Churchville Student Council President.
I am Samantha Cruz.
I am Eli Reifenrath.
Hi, I'm Maddie Plowman.
I'm Lauren Hedman.
I'm Jillian Caforio.
Hi, I'm Zach Raboletti.
And today, we are here to talk to you guys about an update on the rebranding process.
Okay, so something that has come up a lot recently is the question, what does it mean to be a charger? So, what does it mean to be a charger?
Determined.
Respectful.
Diverse.
Unique. And bold.
Right now, our current Churchville Middle School logo is a lightning bolt with 2 C's. We want a logo that represents the characteristics that we just stated.
Okay, so why update, right? So the logos that we have created more so represent the characteristics that we have just stated than our current logo. And some concerns that have come up are tradition and pride, and that these new logos will change the tradition and pride. But that's not changing. That won't change with the new logo. What comes with it is what it means to be a charger, and we're not changing that.
I would also like to add that this is a great way to update old artwork with our logo on it. With this logo change, it gives us many opportunities to show off student artwork or gives us the ability to create more. As student council, we believe that we are in charge of taking students' ideas and thoughts into consideration. And throughout this logo change, this has been a huge factor.
So far, the student council first pitched the idea to Miss Reeder at the start of the year, and over the past year, we have followed the process that Miss Reeder has suggested. So first, we researched rebranding, the pros and cons. Then we created a survey to discover what it means to be a charger. Then we analyzed the data and found the most common responses. Then we took those ideas and shared them with a graphic designer and our computer lit teacher, Ms. Seagate. Then we shared the possible logos with Ms. Reeder, and we organized a survey to get feedback from the student body and staff. And then we went to a student leadership team meeting, which is a board of teachers at our school. And then we sent the survey out to the student body with the possible logos, and now we are here with you at the board meeting.
So in our science classes, the student body took a survey about what it means to be a charger. So the most common adjectives that were shown were respectful, determined, diverse, and unique. And so reflecting on this, we concluded that our logo we want a logo that represents these words more. And we got these words from the student body, so we're representing the students and we're taking their input to make this happen. So therefore, this led to the rebranding process.
The definition of a charger is a horse trained for battle. And if our logo was to become a charger, we would be represented by a living, breathing being instead of an inanimate object.
So these are the three logos. The 2 C's and the lightning bolt is our current one. The top one is the one that Miss Seagate, our computer lit teacher, came up with, and the graphic designer one is the side view of the charger.
Also, if we could just go back like a slide. If you'd see, our current logo does have the 2 C's and the lightning bolt, but throughout all the different logos, that still hasn't changed. We still have a lightning bolt continued on through all of them. So the results. Over 80% of the students, faculty, and community members gave feedback to update the logo. And the top choice to represent Churchville was the horse, the charger on the side view with the lightning bolt on its mane. And 76.9% of the 80% of people that took it did want this. So we sent the survey out to staff, students, and community members for feedback, and we've had over 500 responses thus far from the survey. So now we'd like to take questions and your feedback on it.
Well, first I want to say thank you so much for a very well researched and prepared presentation. So thank you to each of you and to the staff who helped get you ready. Now my question is, if we were to move forward with this, what would that mean for all of the existing emblems that have your logo? Would you want to change all those existing, or would this only be in moving forward? Can you come up to the thing, please? Sorry.
Well, our current logo, it has 2 lightning bolts, and as you could tell by all the choices that we had for our new logo, all incorporated that lightning bolt in it still. So.
Okay. Thank you. Now, I guess what I am asking, so there might be existing sweatshirts and all those other things that are already out there. Or stationery? What would that mean for the existing stationery? Would that need to change, or what would be your thoughts?
Well, as far as like sweatshirts, we make like new sweatshirts every year for athletics and other things like that. So I don't think that would necessarily be the hardest part of this process. Whereas stationary things, I think we want to move forward with that as this process goes on. Does that make sense to you?
So, and I think I understand you. So as if this were to be agreed upon, then it would just be a gradual change in moving forward, not going backwards.
Yes. That's,
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Use up what you have.
Okay. Thank you very much for those very clear questions and answers.
So, actually, my question is, can you come give a tutorial to my marketing department, please? That process was fantastic. It's been what I'm trying to get done in my real life too. So you guys are way ahead of the game. So what are your next steps? So, I mean, hard to argue with what you've presented in the process that you've gone through and the feedback that you've gotten. You've checked all the boxes. I think generally we're extremely impressed. So what's next?
Sorry, ready to choose who's going to speak. So I believe for our next process is we really wanted your feedback and to see what you guys thought of it. And then from there, we would move into, if you guys agreed upon, as you stated, then we would just move forward with possibly start changing some of getting new sweatshirts and different things like that with the new logo.
Is there a budget implication, or is this just? I think this is what Margaret was kind of saying is, as you ordinarily reorder things, you would reorder things with the new logo. Is that the plan? So really, it's neutral budget wise.
Yeah, it is, because every year we do buy new clothing, and at the beginning of the year for the new 6th graders, we have a spirit wear kind of like sale when they come in and get their combos, and anybody can buy from that. So there we just print out the new logo onto those items, and in the end it would still end up costing the same, but gradually all of the from the old logo, if it gets approved, would then just kind of fade away a little bit.
So forgive our questions. Most people come up here looking for money from us. But I have to say, you guys did a great job. And I agree with the people that took the survey. Had I taken that survey, I would have picked that logo as well. I think you did a fabulous job. My votes, go for it.
One last piece of advice: you might want to copyright that too, so nobody steals it from you.
Any other questions or feedback?
I think you represent your school well. For everybody who knows Churchville, this is no surprise. This is the way Churchville works. You guys harness the energy of your school, and I think it really shows in a really dynamic logo that you're handling just the right way. So very supportive of what you're doing.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Nicely done. I liked the fact that you went out to not only your peers in the school and the staff, but the community members to get their feedback. And I like the selection too. It was interesting that you had not only a professional, but even in-house staff that created a logo for you.
Thanks.
Okay. Next, we have the Educational Alignment Study, and we have consultants from White and Associates.
I should know that, right? So thank you very much. That's a tough act to follow. I'd say that's all awesome. We're going to talk a little bit about buildings, but really what we're going to talk about is what the kids do in those buildings and a little different way to look at it. So there's a little bit of a connection here. So I want to introduce a couple people. I should have introduced myself. I'm Brad Paulson with White & Company. I'm the practice leader for our K-12 education group. A couple of people are going to join me. Terry Moeller is also sitting in the audience. He's been involved with the school district for a long time, but Craig Siepke
and Wendy Watts are somewhat new faces to you. We've taken a little bit different approach in this study. Wendy actually may not be a new face. She's a resident and parent of students in the school. So we're going to talk a little bit about something. About a month ago, you approved us to do a study that really tried to look at two things: how well the buildings align with learning, all the stuff that goes on in your schools, how well they learn with future-ready learning and 21st century learning objectives, but also to begin working on a model classroom concept at a couple schools over the course of the summer and into the school year. So we're going to share with you our findings on that and the progress, and lay out some next steps that you may choose to consider should you continue down the road. But first, I want to kind of connect the things we're going to talk about tonight to teaching and learning, and show how teaching and learning and facilities are all kind of interwoven between your student achievement action plans as well as some of the findings from Focus 205. So first off, in your student action plans, we looked at that, and there's really about 5 different items that we can draw some parallels and some direct connections into a facility-related impact, everything from how students are prepared for the future using the 4 C's. We'll talk about that. Look a little bit beyond what best practices are and consider what next practices are in facility planning for the future. We talk about student engagement and how things can be implemented in classrooms to really complement and reinforce and make better student achievement. And then things like personalized learning and collaboration. Those are all components of your student achievement plan that have some connection to the facilities and the way the facilities may need to adapt for the future. As it relates to the Focus 205 findings, there's connections all over the place. We looked at those. We participated in CES 4. You'll hear a little bit about that tonight. But issues related to challenges and concerns about class size distribution, technology infrastructure, the impact of possibly adding all-day kindergarten and how that could be supported in the schools or across the district, the next generation science standards that are now in place in Illinois and how that could be enforced, or not enforced, but included through a Project Lead the Way program. The financial considerations which impact everything. It's not just about buildings and learning, but there's also financial considerations that need to get balanced. And then the facility-related concerns, not just how students learn and where they learn, but also the condition of those buildings. How can we optimize the learning environment and kind of extend the life of the buildings that your community members have supported over so many years and so many decades. But in the end, the finding was to suggest to the board to conduct a long-range facilities plan. And really what that plan is a process. So we're going to talk a little bit about that process tonight and some of the information we've gathered so far and how that might enable you to go down a road over the balance of a longer period of time. So what is a facility long-range master plan? It's a very dynamic roadmap that goes building by building and helps you forecast future improvements in the buildings. It really balances a combination of the building needs, things like infrastructure and building enclosure, with the educational needs of what a future-ready student and future-ready graduate needs to be able to do and know and learn and how to apply knowledge. It balances community priorities, so what we're going to talk about has been heavily integrated with the Focus 205 Phase 2 process that you will possibly implement over the next several months and balance of this year. It talks about the financial requirements. How's that? What are the financial resources going to be needed? When are those going to be needed over time, and where can they be best applied? And then it talks about possible timelines. So those are all things that feed into a facility master plan that will help guide the board not only in immediate decisions, but over long range decisions over a period of time. So in the process of developing that, there's a couple of things that we collect, information that we collect that go into sort of the bucket that needs to be considered and resolved. So the physical condition information on the buildings is information that the school district has a good handle on. Those are things like the condition of roofs, boilers, mechanical systems, windows, finishes within the buildings, kind of more of the infrastructure related stuff. Building capacity and enrollment is something that the district has, and I understand based on the Focus 205 recommendations is something to be looked at a little bit more closely. And then the educational alignment of the buildings. How well do the buildings support the types of instruction and programs you're offering now, but also maybe need to be considering in the future to prepare students for college and career. Through that process, we have laid out a series of steps for you to consider the community priorities as part of that Focus 205 effort, which will eventually allow you to conclude with a facility master plan. So as that is the backdrop, it's always good to start with a few reminders and why is educational alignment important. And I will go back to Dr. Moyer's quote about Henry Ford, that it's important to look at buildings and look at education and look at the needs of students, not based on where they need to be right now, but where things are going. It also kind of reminds me of the famous Wayne Gretzky quote that he's had success not by thinking about where the puck is, but thinking about where the puck needs to go. So I've quoted Henry Ford and Wayne Gretzky all in the same presentation. So it's important to think about the future. And a lot of conversation now in literature and research about what kind of student and what kind of people are we trying to prepare as they leave the doors of York High School or the Transition Center. So Tony Wagner is one of those authors and researchers that has talked a lot about the skills that are needed in the innovation society. Skills like critical thinking, problem solving, the importance of communication. You saw that tonight with these students, that fantastic communication using technology, but also getting in front of an audience. They did a lot better than I would have done at that age. And then collaboration and curiosity. Those are things that are all very, very important. So a little bit about today's students. So how are today's students different? So Generation Z, the students that are in the schools now, have a different set of skills, a different set of expectations. They're going to be going into a different set of careers. So it's important as we believe, as adults and community members and board members and architects to make sure we're not looking and making decisions through the lens of our own experience, that these students are going to be venturing into a different world and have a different level of kind of global competition that they're going to have to be prepared for. So students are going to have a lot of different jobs, a lot of different homes. They're going to need to learn how to be flexible, have the ability to adapt, have the ability to overcome failure. Those are things that are nurtured in schools and in the homes. And have the ability to relearn not only where they work or relearn what they know, but also where they work. So all important skills. A couple interesting tidbits about Generation Z, that when they get into the workforce in less than 10 years and 9 years, they're going to come up with in a workforce which is largely made up of the same kinds of students who are going to be, or workers that are going to go through have the same set of skills, the same set of experiences. So we need to think about what they're going to look like in their workforce. Students are going to need to learn how to lead and think and solve as a team. It's no longer just an individual directing to a larger group what the needs are, but as you saw today, these are students working together to come up with solutions and share that back out to their community. And then a couple of interesting things about today's students. The kindergarten student of today was born the same year as the iPad. Interesting thoughts. So the students in your schools now and in the future are going to have a device in their hand and know how to use that a lot better than we as adults do. And then the junior class has had Google in their life the entire time since they've been born. So Google is a very familiar activity and tool that they use throughout their life and their student life and as well as their adult life. So the world is changing. We have to prepare for students for that change. And our premise is the learning environment should also support that type of learning and future-ready students. So what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Craig and Wendy to talk about what it is we looked at and how we looked at it and what some of our findings were.
Well, good evening, everyone. Good to be here. As Brad eloquently talked about, the sort of the why of the educational alignment study and how it fits into a kind of a comprehensive look at all of your facilities, I get the opportunity of talking a little bit about what it is before we get into the findings of our survey. And really, kind of the short of it is an educational alignment study it's really a metric tool that we use to rate your facilities, different components and characteristics of your facilities and how well they align, support the educational experience of your kids, your teachers, and the families that you serve. It's roughly, there are about 56 characteristics. All of those characteristics and categories are rated on a five-point scale. They're tallied up, and I'll go through some of the results of what we found at your facilities in just a brief moment. There we go. So overall, there are three real major categories that we look at each one of your facilities. The first is called the campus context, sort of the macro view of your sites. We look at things such as circulation, both vehicular and pedestrian circulation. We're looking at the play spaces, the fields. Really, the image of the building is part of that category and so forth, and as well as some of the safety and security components and how well they respond on a daily basis to the students as they use it, as they come to the site and leave for the day. The second category is facility configuration. That is another macro view, but it really takes a look not at the site, but at your buildings themselves. So we're looking at how the spaces are organized, how they relate to one another, where they're positioned at in the building, and how they relate to the site as well. So it's a little bit bigger picture of how the overall facility itself is constructed, figured, and how the plan layout kind of works within itself. And then lastly, we start taking a look in the micro level. We look at the learning spaces themselves, and we start taking a look at the characteristics that make up those spaces and make them comfortable, supportive of the educational experience for the kids. So we're looking at, when we talk about that, we're looking at the finishes, we're looking at the temperatures, a whole range of characteristics. Again, that's probably the largest category that we have in this entire study, and the results certainly will bear us out. When we do this, if you remember back at during the CS4, we had the opportunity of going through really those characteristics. Anatomy is what we called it, of a future-ready school. We've identified 10 components based on our experience, understanding, and research that really go into making these future-ready facilities. They're listed right over here. That's sort of the backdrop and kind of the impetus of these categories and the rating systems that we have. And we also marry that along with the sort of the top 6, the number of statements and impacts and priorities that were identified by the community members during that same session. And what we've listed over here on the slide before you is really the top 6 components and really how they reflect the physical environments that you have for your kids. Brad had mentioned once before doing the building condition assessment. That was one of the top priorities from your community members, and really that's focusing on the infrastructure components. That's something different that was done in a different study than what we're doing over here now, but the idea of flexible environments, balancing future-ready needs with the learning environment, the practical infrastructure needs, that's always something that's critical. This idea of all-day kindergarten programs and how to address that in your facilities, something we're going to touch on in just a moment, as well as safety, security. Those are the things that really we're starting to look at in conjunction with all of the other 53 characteristics that I had mentioned earlier. So it was back in about the beginning of April that we got together, and over the course of about 8 different days, reached out and visited each one of your facilities, all of the elementary schools, the middle schools. We went out to Madison Elementary School, or Madison Early Childhood Center. And we also took a stop over at the Transition Center, but because of the unique nature of that facility and the kinds of spaces that are in there, it wasn't easily rated along with in the same way that we did the elementary schools. But we did take notes, and that's going to be used kind of moving forward with the district. So a little bit in some general observations that we had about your elementary schools. We're going to start there first, and then Wendy's going to follow up with some of the middle schools. incredible energy, and I want to say overall a consistency from facility to facility in a great many ways. Both in terms of the look, the feel, what people were saying, and how they use the facilities. We don't find that too often, especially when you consider the number of facilities that we were looking at. I think the messages are getting out very clearly to the staff, and it's kind of nice to see that consistency. Technology, of course, is really a big part of the educational component and experience of the kids these days. And we spent some time talking with the principals at each one of the schools with regards to that. Some of the things that we noticed, you have these TLCs, the Technology Learning Centers there, and the idea of kind of repurposing those particular spaces is something that I challenged the people that I spoke with at each one of the buildings. And almost to a T, they pushed back. And it's a conversation we've been having with a lot of schools at this time. However, respecting the fact that testing is important has become a really important part of what's happening at the schools, as well as a variety of other issues. Across the board, everyone felt that those particular spaces were important, but there might be an opportunity of looking at those in a different perspective moving forward. And back at the office, we talk a lot about making buildings more efficient and effective for kids, and spaces being a little bit more hardworking, which means that they have to serve more than one function. And that might might be really a great way of looking at and thinking about your computer labs, most of which are right by your libraries, as we proceed forward. Libraries, speaking of libraries, is really another really important topic and a heady topic that's we're having with a lot of school districts right now, reconsidering what the function of libraries are and how they are purposed for the kids. Instead of just being warehouses of books, they really become these active, dynamic, project-based collaborative spaces for kids, really kind of dynamic, energized spaces that serve kids in a great, across the board in great many ways and functions. I have to say, again, as far as the consistency goes, I see that in the libraries as well. They tend to be on a little bit more of the traditional end, if I may say so. And books are important. They are weighted very heavily in your district. And that might be something that we would like to take a look at and have a conversation with a little bit more, especially as technology is being outlaid into your throughout all the various grade levels. And there might be an opportunity, again, similar to the computer labs, to reconsider and think about how those spaces function and what they are doing during the course of the day for your staff and your kids. Core learning environments. Again, the buildings were constructed and really kind of set up for an educational experience that's different than it is for the kids right now. And the idea of flexibility and adaptability is very critical when you start talking about these spaces. Technology enables that in a great many ways, as does the furniture. And that is one of the drivers behind looking at and doing the model classrooms that Wendy's going to speak about in just a few moments. As far as the repetitiveness or the consistency within your spaces, I affectionately refer to the color and the finishes that I see in each one of the spaces as sort of the Elmhurst cream color. I don't know if I've seen any other colors besides that within the environments, and I could tell you that there isn't a very cheap and simple way of kind of modifying those environments in a little bit more robust way, and that is really through the paint and kind of consider the different kinds of finishes that you have in those spaces, and really again how they can support and make a very enriched environment for the kids and all the education that goes on over there. Heating and ventilation fluctuations within the spaces is also another consistency that came up time and time again. We need to look at that a lot more closely, and I'm sure, and I know that's been done with regards to your building condition assessment, and something that kind of figured into our overall rating of those spaces. Lastly, I wanted to kind of mention the enhanced learning opportunities that you have throughout the spaces. Now, all the pictures that you've been seeing as I'm going through these general observations have been other spaces that we've had the good fortune of being involved with or doing research on. In this particular instance, I want to call your attention to that bottom left-hand photograph, which is a snapshot of the outdoor learning spaces over at Emerson. And I think it's really representative, indicative of kind of another thread that seems to be running its way through the districts, and your willingness and desire and execution in terms of taking advantage of the outdoor environments here at in the district. And I think that is something to be celebrated and further enjoyed. It happens at Emerson. It happened at a number of facilities, and I'm telling you, there's a lot to be learned by other districts in your use of the outdoor spaces. So that was really a positive. The other thing that I noticed throughout your facility is the prominence of the visual arts programs, both in terms of displaying, carving out space for that program and displaying proudly the student artwork. That happened time and time again. Some special kudos go to a couple of the schools. One in particular just happened to be the first school that I went to, which was Conrad Fisher. I mean, just all over the place. It was obvious that people were taking pride in what the students were doing, and it really was really quite something. I think it's also really a sign of a healthy educational experience for the kids. That's one of the gauges that we use, kind of one of those silent gauges that we use as we look at and move through the schools for these assessments. Small group collaborative spaces, I could say, was one of those things that I wish I would have seen more of as I was going through here, both in terms of in the libraries and scattered throughout the buildings, so that teachers had actually carved out intentional space for some one-on-one instructional activities. That was kind of missing. And I think there's an opportunity yet to be taken advantage of with regards to STEM and maker spaces, whether it's in the libraries, as you might want to think about reimagining what happens there, or elsewhere in the facility. There's opportunities to be had. Lastly, I just wanted to make a special note with regards to Madison Early Childhood Center. Kind of a subject really near and dear to my heart. While we did rate it and rank it with along the same lines as the elementary schools, it's really kind of a relative schedule. You really have to look at that a little differently than the elementary schools and the middle schools, simply because it's a different kind of environment, a different kind of school. Looking at it, again, the idea of energy and happiness and joy that when you enter that facility was really palpable and something that kind of overwhelms you. However, there are once you get past that, there are some challenges that you have to recognize. And what we've shown over here is a couple examples. On the first two photographs on top are existing photographs of a hallway on the left, and on the right, a typical classroom. And then down below, just a kind of comparison of a facility that we did for a district down the road in Naperville, the Ann Reed Early Childhood Center. And they point out two very important aspects and things that you might want to consider as far as improvements for that facility moving forward. And the idea of making and maximizing use of the hallways for educational experience, and not let it be a repository for, or just a place to store things. At Madison, because of the classrooms are a bit on the undersized size for the classes, storage is being pushed out into the hallways, and in addition to that, the toilet rooms, because there's no room there. The toilet rooms are down the hall, and then there's a whole host of issues that happens with transitioning from one activity to another, waste of time for instruction and so forth. That really needs to be looked at and scrutinized a little bit more as far as our recommendations go. Inside the classrooms, really that facility is a typical elementary school that's been adapted for early childhood purposes. When we talk about designing for early childhood, we talk about designing from the waist down, the bottom third of the classroom. And if you take a look at the things that are happening, not too unsurprisingly, at the Madison classrooms, a lot of things are happening from the first 2/3, the upper 2/3 of the space. So, you know, the movement of the air, the access to the views to the outside, the heights of the chalkboards, the tack boards, and so forth, all are at that upper level, which is for older kids, geared for all the older kids, and adapted with furniture for the young grade level. So it's something that we want to take a look at a little bit further as we make these spaces more child-centric and personalized and customized for this young age group. I've said too much already on that particular one. We'll move right along now to the ratings. What we have over here is all the a brief chart with all the numbers that go along with each one of the rating categories that we have for the elementary schools. So if you look on the left side, these are the schools right over here, and then categories, the campus context that I spoke about earlier, followed by the facility configuration, and then the learning spaces. All of those numbers then are totaled up by school over here and organized accordingly. Madison, again, because of the fact of its unique nature, although we did rate it in the same way that we did the elementary schools, it really deserves to be kind of separated out because it's benchmarked, you know, against other kinds of schools of its nature, which you don't have here in the district. So, moving over to the kind of graphic representation of all of those numbers, what we find over here, we have the 3 charts for the campus, the facility, as well as the learning spaces. And those, let's see, the schools, what we've done, the first 2 schools that have the highest rating and the 2 schools that have the lowest rating are kind of depicted in blue. So in the campus context, you see that over here. Really not surprisingly, Hawthorne is the darkest blue. As far as the campus context goes, it's receiving the highest rating, as well as Fisher, surprisingly Fisher Elementary School, right alongside it. On the far end over here, and again, this might not be too new to you, but Lincoln, as well as Madison, were on the farther end over there. And that really goes to, really speaks to the way the sites are organized, drop-off loading zones and so forth that are in and around the buildings. Otherwise, the other schools that are in the green, all the other elementary schools, are more or less in the same range. I think when you start taking a look at Emerson's, even though it has that wonderful, that wonderful outdoor instructional area, because of the logistics of where it's at, the fact that kids are being dropped off in the adjoining property and then having to walk to the school, and then some of the challenges that you have with navigating those kids through the parking lots and so forth, is one of those schools, along with Field, that are on the lower end of that middle range. Yes.
Great. Yeah. I just wanted to ask quick. I don't know why there's a discrepancy, but on your slides over there for campus context, your target zone is from 30 to 40, and in my slideshow, in my board document, it's from 35 to 45 for campus context. And just for clarity's sake, in case the same thing is the case for the board, what is the actual target zone for campus? Is it 30 to 40 or 35 to 45?
It is 30 to 40. So
Okay.
let me explain just a moment a little bit about the target zones. We made an adjustment to it. We caught an error in where the bar was. Okay. So we made an adjustment to it right before the presentation and uploaded it onto the computer here. The target zones really are a reflection. If we're rating things on a 1 to 5 scale, then the sort of the target you want to be is in between a 3 and a 4. And with the understanding that if you get in a 5, it's an exceptional. It's really like a brand new building. We recognize and respect the fact that these are not new buildings. You're dealing with existing situations and circumstances. And getting a 5 for any one of the 56 characteristics that we looked at your facilities about really didn't happen too often and is not uncommon. There are some things that happen over at Hawthorne, I think. Some of the site amenities that I was speaking about earlier that really received that 5 category, but those were the exception and not the norm. So the target range really happens between that 3 and 4 score, and that happens per each one of the categories, the facility configuration as well as the learning spaces. So as we move over to the next, from campus over to the facility configuration, again, actually a little bit more balancing out and leveling out, I guess, if you will, of the scores that we have over here. By and large, what we found is a great many of your schools are well aligned with what we would expect in terms of adjacencies between spaces, locations of classrooms, the groupings, where the libraries are located, and the position of your main offices with regards to the main entrances, with the exception of a field, which was up the stairs and then kind of away from the main entrance. That's a situation that needs to be looked at a little bit more closely. Lincoln and Madison were the two schools, if you look at that chart over there, that really received a pretty dramatically low score. And I think it's self-evident with all the different levels that you have, the location of the library, the art rooms kind of tucked in the corner over there, not really relating to each other without any access to the outside. An oddly positioned music room where it's at and so forth. All of those contributed to kind of lowering that score in a pretty dramatic way. And then, as I said, when we were looking at the Early Childhood Center, getting past the energy, excitement, and joy that was palpable when you moved in there, there are quite a few challenges from the configuration side, and mostly centered around storage, the toilets, as well as the main entrance over there, similar to Field, where it was kind of removed from the main entry vestibule and so forth. That's something, again, to be looked at. Lastly, the learning space category, that started flattening things out even more. And that's a reflection of the fact that as we moved from campus to facility to learning spaces, we had more and more categories, or more and more elements and components that we were grading and rating as we went along. And so as we done that again, within each one of the classrooms, the consistency kind of bared itself out. If there was a problem at one school, we typically found that it was a problem kind of going across the board. Or if there was a challenge that the teachers faced, we found it time and time again. However, also the good things, the technology that you have available over there, and access to daylight, which was tremendous from school to school to school, with the exception of a few classrooms that we saw that were kind of tucked in as need be. For example, over at Lincoln, most of the classrooms had great access to the outside. I just wish that as I was going through there, and this is just a side story in terms of consistency, that the blinds that you have on the windows could be open so people could look out. It was just one of those struggles, and to a T, whenever I asked about it, every teacher had the same response. They didn't want the students to be distracted. They wanted them to be focused inside the classroom. Perhaps, I'm a lifelong daydreamer. Perhaps there's a better way, I hope. But I'm not the educator. So taking all three of these categories and kind of summarizing all of them, we took a look at what that meant for each one of the facilities. So we added them up. Again, Hawthorne as well as Fisher receiving the highest scores, and certainly in the target range that we would want to see, between roughly about 160, 165 or so, and 224, 25. So it's kind of that range that Hawthorne is well within. And Fisher is right on the cusp, so they're right there. All the other facilities kind of fall just slightly below, but again in a consistent way. Fisher in that middle level, certainly being the lesser of all of those green, the schools kind of listed in green, and then of course Lincoln and Madison on the lower end of the scores, as mathematically would be evident by the previous metrics that we used and showed. Then lastly, we thought we'd make just a comparison to how the one other metric that we use is the square footage per student, and we kind of benchmark that against national standards. Really, for an elementary school level, you're looking at about 125 to 155 square feet per student in each one of the schools. And this is where it got kind of really out of whack, I guess, if you will, and we have results all over the place. So when we start taking a look at Edison, that was well above what we would normally see for an elementary school here or outside the state. All the other elementary schools were kind of in the target range, including Hawthorne. Lincoln and surprisingly Fisher, which scored well in other categories, was kind of low, and that's a reflection of the number of students really that you have in that particular school. So there's some elbow room that is needed for those schools, and maybe that had to do with over at Fisher, at least the energy that I experienced when I walked through the facility over there, the kind of kids crawling all over the place. So, and then lastly. The Madison was kind of a one of those weird beasts. The classrooms are oversized. There's not enough storage. The toilets are down the halls and so forth. And yet it scored higher than the average that we'd like to see for that kind of facility. And really the reason behind that is the fact that you have an elementary size gymnasium in that facility. So that's bringing up the average above and beyond, really what is indicative of how those spaces are sized and arranged. So just something to keep in mind. There are nuances to all of these things, and a lot of details that go into it. I'm sure as you kind of delve into the numbers a little bit more, you might have some questions, and we'll be here and be able to answer those as they come forth. So with that said, I want to turn it over to Wendy to talk a little bit about the middle schools.
Great. All right, so while Craig was saying that he found a little bit of parity between the elementary schools, I would say your middle schools are all incredibly unique animals. Definitely. And that's great, that's fine. There's a great uniqueness that we felt between the different schools, yet, a familiarity in some of the programs. So I'm going to start off as Craig did with just some overall generalizations. And in all honesty, there's so much detail to this report. We could talk all night, but we will not do that to you. So similar to the K-5 schools, the libraries in the middle schools as well, we really see as spaces that, and so I have a before picture down there below the today, and then just some thoughts moving forward for the future. Consistently, one thing that was really nice that we saw in all the libraries, your librarians have made a lot of measures to cull the collection back and eliminate and be weaning the collection, which I think is great. It opens up a lot of student space, but there's a lot of space that's available and ready to be used. So the other interesting parallel that I heard consistently from all the middle school principals was, gosh, I really wish I had a place for my grade level to meet, or at Sandburg, where there's a team structure. I wish I had a place for, my 125 students for the team to meet, and then to break down into smaller groups and be able to do their activities, particularly all the new things that are being assigned in classes where it's constantly teamwork. And I'm thinking to myself, I highly doubt we're going to be building some new wings of buildings just for meeting space, but really you could leverage all of those library spaces to perform that very need. With some changes, I think those are really great opportunities, square footage that's ripe for evolving a little bit of the nature of how the library works, as well as meeting some of the needs that we heard from the middle school principals. Talk about a space that could really embrace all the different 4 Cs, going back to all the conversations that we had in the fall. Similar to the elementary schools as well is the technology integration. So in all of the computer lit programs, still having the computer labs with lots of desktop units that I'm pretty sure no one was using at any of the schools that I went to. And they're doing great. They're using the space in a different way. Obviously, they've had the Chromebooks for much longer, and more sophisticated methods that the teachers have for group work that they're doing there, but just taking that idea a little bit further. So again, using the spaces that you already have, but better, evolving with the programs. This is one smaller aspect. Consistently, in all 3 of the middle schools, the science labs, almost in every room, other than some of the new ones, there's always an elevated teacher station, which is completely common from schools built in the 40s, 50s, 60s, maybe even 70s. But what that means is you have a good portion of your room then that is completely inflexible, can't be used for anything else. And what I found really kind of remarkable was, particularly in this room, teachers aren't even using, in some cases, the demonstration table. They're teaching off of the cart where the Elmo is, and in an entirely different place. So there's, a good chunk of that room that could be used for student space, and in which case, especially as class sizes are getting, in some schools, bigger and bigger, the student space is more and more crunched. So wouldn't it be great to take that over and maximize that? And then lastly, this was common amongst all 3 of the schools as well, was the tech arts program. So we know that makerspaces are really popular, fantastic hands-on creation that students love, but they take up a lot of space. After your gymnasiums and cafeterias, it's probably the next biggest chunk of square footage, at least at the middle school level. And, rightfully so. You have some serious equipment that has a lot of safety concerns. But I think back to the last community session in December, talking about evolution of curriculum, and should we be going the route of Project Lead the Way or some STEM instruction? Just a reanalysis of how are those spaces best leveraged for the curriculum moving forward. So those were my big observations. Fewer schools here then. So looking at, just as Craig did, some of the metrics across the board, the campus context being pretty good actually for all three of the middle schools. Churchville's a little bit lower, and I'll mention that again, campus context was about ease of finding the front door, outside space, and pedestrian traffic, access to access to transportation for teachers, or their bike racks for the students. So Churchville definitely scored lower, and I think most of us who have been there know why. It's really hard to get to the front door. It not being visible from York and really having to go through deeply into a neighborhood to find it. So that affected that score there. Then for the facility configuration, remember this is then taking a look at the overall floor plan and how adjacencies are. Are there logical rooms next to other rooms? Big noise producing spaces like band not being directly next to some really sound critical spaces. You're actually in pretty good shape there. However, Brian, I would say, goes above and beyond. Brian was really a delight for me. I've been in the school before, but never walked through all of it. And we were talking internally and just saying if we were designing a brand new middle school today, Brian has a lot of the great foundations that really would happen right now. Other than the lack of security at the front door, it's pretty remarkable building. So that's great. Churchville and Sandburg were pretty close at that. But then again, moving to learning spaces, a commonality, as Craig had found with the K through 5 rooms, the learning spaces being a little bit more under where we would want to see them. And that has to do with a lot of different things. The configuration, the size of the room, the actual amount of cubic volume, and keep in mind for the middle schools, we're talking about a lot of different types of learning spaces, not just your core classrooms, science labs, music, the unified arts as well. So a lot of different factors there. And then bringing it all together, the total scores then between the middle schools, putting all of the possible points from those 56 categories, Brian edging out a little bit higher, but really the middle schools are, for all of their pluses and negatives, end up being on par pretty close. And then lastly, taking a look at that national average of square foot per student, all three of the middle schools are actually within the ideal range of where you would want them to be. So just a lot of different ways of slicing and dicing this information and what you can extract from it. So then lastly, on a final note for me, is an exercise that we're going through right now with some committee members from several different schools, from Fisher, Lincoln, and Bryan, as well as the principals and administration, taking a look at perhaps developing some model classrooms. And this is being done with the assistance of the foundation for the district, and not moving walls or doing anything crazy, but looking at how could some of the premises that we've been talking about earlier in the presentation, different types of furniture, perhaps changing around even some of the technology in the space, how can we test drive some of these ideas on a very small scale before the district would take a look at it. Does this really work? Is this something we'd want to roll out in a big way? So that hopefully will be happening this fall.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is the next steps, but we've talked for a long time, so I thought maybe we would take a little pause and see if you had any questions that while we just presented. The next steps is really just pretty quickly about where you could go from this point forward. So if you have any questions about a lot of the data we've shown, research, assessments, all that kind of stuff, or we can just keep going too.
Just keep going, because I think maybe my questions might be the next steps.
Good, then we'll just do that. So where do you go from here? Well, first off, we're going to be assembling a report of all this information, so you'll see a lot more information in the next week or so, what the information, the details of this. So where do you go from here? So that kind of starts with back to the Focus 205 findings, and that's really had suggested to develop a long-range master plan. So I'm going to go back to this chart. What we've been doing at this point forward is really focusing on collecting data, collecting information, making assessments, learning about your buildings, how they're being used, observing how they should be used. We're going to be getting feedback from these model classrooms that are going to be developed in 3 of the schools. And then the logical approach would be to use that information to begin a process with the Focus 205 Phase 2 to begin developing plans, developing basic facility master plan concepts at an individual school and site level, as well as looking at some district-wide planning concepts that are going to be important to be considered and tie back directly to what Focus 205 said. So the process that we have kind of drafted as a proposal would include community priorities with issues that the rest of the community engagement process might consider. So we developed a very extensive timeline. I don't expect you to read this. I'm going to go through some of these steps, and you'll see that it really starts in that status bar, which is tonight, and then as I scroll down, the tasks continue all the way through the end of the year. So what we had developed as an option for you to consider is an extensive process to look at school level planning issues, to look at district-wide planning issues, to integrate that with as I mentioned, the Focus 205 process, have regular meetings with the facilitating team. I think that we've met with many of them a lot already, have continued community input, and then have multiple opportunities for the Board of Education to see progress and help provide feedback along the way. So some of the highlights that are within this process, should you choose to go down this road, will be to start right around mid-June after your June 14th board meeting. We already have a tentative scheduled facilitating team meeting on June 15th. We would begin a process of comparing the building level issues, the physical needs, the educational needs, and begin coming up with some preliminary solutions on a per building basis, and then consider some of the district-wide scenarios such as all-day kindergarten, such as balancing enrollments, et cetera, that might want to be considered as part of that plan. Targeted updates for the board on July 19th and August 23rd, which is part of your currently scheduled plan. We would begin having conversations again with the schools and the principals right around mid-August, meet with the facilitating team again in August, and then have kind of tentatively targeted a mid-September, the week of September 19th, for the next community engagement session, which I believe would be a great opportunity for you to touch back out with your community and give an update on some of the things you've done in follow-up to the initial Focus 205 recommendations, and then share some of the work on this facility master planning process with you, or with the community. Also be incorporating some of the feedback from the schools, the 3 classrooms where we've developed model classroom concepts. Have another opportunity right around mid-November before Thanksgiving to have a follow-up session with the community so they can kind of weigh in on some of the concepts and developments and issues that are being considered. We've also laid in some ample time for you to complement the Focus 205 process, should you choose, with some public opinion research. There's different ways to do that through surveys, whether it's online or phone or some kind of community dialogue type tools that are available in the marketplace right now that we've begun analyzing and then or exploring, and then set up really a process for the board to weigh in on towards the end of the year in November, December, January, and so on, to figure out what you want to do with the facility master plan, how you might want to look at timing of it, possible implementation, all those issues that we talked about very early about the important parts of a facility master plan. So all of those details are laid out preliminarily in the timeline that I kind of slid through on the screen. So that's a process that would go from where we are today through generally about the end of the year. So then I think we're at closing comments and questions. Hopefully harder ask questions than you ask the students. Or easier at questions.
I know that some of our schools, we have a lot of students. And, you know, kind of getting to capacity. So how does this address that? Or can it? If you repurpose a space, is it possible to not have the same issues? Are we having the issues of, you know, capacity based on just how things are laid out?
You want to talk about the layout?
Well, I think at the middle school level, I'll speak for that. Craig can speak to the elementary schools, especially with the larger class sizes that are the norm there. That's where spaces like the science areas. You know, typically the classrooms are within a decent range. Sometimes it gets to be when there's not proper storage in the room, and that starts taking over a lot of space. That could be student space, that's one thing, but I would say it's probably more in the specialized areas. With replanning, I don't know necessarily that you'd want to increase the class size, or I'm sure the teachers don't necessarily want that either, but I think the flexibility for the students to be able to do more in different things. But where it gets really interesting is if maybe in some of the rethinking, is that where we can find a found classroom? You know, by maybe perhaps cobbling together space from several adjacent areas that could be rethought of in a different way. So finding classrooms within your footprint, that might be a goal then. Mm-hmm.
And if you remember, I was talking about the idea of hardworking spaces and making them multifunctional, multi-purpose, and that has its limits as well. But if you remember from the graphs that we were showing square foot per student, by and large, well, your buildings were kind of all over the place. There were some large fluctuations. I think most notably, Fisher had some overcrowding, as did Lincoln. And how to balance that out is something that we would kind of consider when we get into the planning aspects of that. Of the plan further down the road. It's important to note where some of those discrepancies are, or those wild fluctuations or large fluctuations, and again, they would figure into a more well-rounded, robust conversation about the capacity at each school and what is possible in terms of maybe expansion or repurposing of spaces or doubling up of spaces, and what isn't. One item, if I may, that I didn't touch on that kind of figured heavily into the configuration of the facilities was kindergarten, and that idea of all-day kindergarten and so forth. One of those, again, another one of those consistencies is in a number of the facilities we saw the kindergarten classrooms being moved and relocated in other parts of the facility that really were not initially constructed or contemplated for the kinds of activities that happen for that grade level. And then taking what were supposed to be the kindergarten classrooms and using those for other functions, and knowing that there are certain needs for other programs as well is important. But I think looking at where kindergarten rooms fall within the spaces or in the facilities is going to be really critical, and one of those planning ideas that's going to be a driver and as we take a look at district-wide what's going on at your schools.
You bring up 2 points. One is there a possibility of scaling things? So, it's almost like a transition. You transition, in stages, if you will. Is that a possibility? Or is that typically not what you do?
Can you elaborate on that?
As you said, as you repurpose things. Mm-hmm. So you could think of it as it's all just a mass repurpose, or is it scalable or transitional, if you will, to... I'm looking at, is it can we do phased approach? Or, the first question that I had was, what are the big hitters? And then I thought, wait a second, there could be options, mm-hmm. right? And so that's kind of, I'm trying to get a sense of big versus small versus stepping stones.
Yeah, well, I would say the value of having a long-range facility master plan is to help you lay out how it can be implemented over time. So one way to do this would be to think about a large program. Another way to think about it would be how to phase in key issues over a period of time. So that's the value of having this plan, and that's why you look at an individual school level, and then you look at a district-wide level, and then try to figure out how those things marry together with logic, considering community priorities, et cetera. So yeah, scalable is going to be an important consideration, and that's why it's a district-wide plan made up of individual pieces.
And last question is around, I know that you talked about libraries, computer labs, those sorts of things. So I also think of resource centers, right? So do you look at all of the space and say, you know, can we almost use the same space for library, computer, you know, like a typical library, if you will, today, not when we created the schools? Do you think about those sorts of options?
Absolutely. That's all part of that future readiness that we, you know, kind of a lens that we look at the facilities about. So, and I know I can speak for Wendy. It happens not only at the elementary school level, but we certainly would do it at the middle school level as well. Yeah. And even the early childhood level. Yeah.
If I wanted to see some school districts that were on the forefront of what you're proposing here, what are your top 5, top 10 to go see?
Top 10. Well, yeah, I got a few.
Okay, go ahead.
Do they have to be in Illinois?
No.
So,
No, I'll let you pick from the whole country.
okay. So well, there is a school district out in Kansas that we've had the opportunity of partnering with on a brief scale as Blue Valley School District. You've probably heard of them. I think there's a lot of great things happening over in Naperville 203. And we recently completed a long-range facility assessment on implementation of those ideas, and some of those ideas time is going by now, about 6 years ago, over in Des Plaines School District 62, where we have a number of spaces and so forth that kind of are reflective of some of these forward-reaching and thinking ideas. But by and large, we're kind of implementing and looking at and partnering with school districts one space at a time, one facility at a time. They are dotted all over Chicago and the Chicagoland area. We cast a far net, and we would be more than willing and very pleased to share with you more pictures, even tour the facilities as the time allots to give you a real-life example of some of the things that we're talking about here. So, Wendy, you want to add to that?
Well, it's not built yet, but Sunset Ridge School, which is up in Northfield, it's one of the feeder schools going into New Trier. A little bit unique. It's a 4th through 8th grade building, so it's kind of like a middle school plus. But when we look at those anatomy items for Future Ready School, I think they have all of them, in all honesty. So, building's not done yet, but, you know, we certainly have plans and perspectives, you know, so you can experience sort of some of the ideas on the inside.
And you said that school's in Northbrook?
Northfield.
Northfield.
Mm-hmm.
And it's under construction. It's a new building.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. And then my other question is correlation between what you're proposing and student achievement. Any?
Well, yeah, we talked a little bit about this yesterday. There's a lot of research that talks about the impact of daylight, furniture, information like that has a direct impact on student learning. We'd have to have a conversation about digging into the actual research that correlates to maybe a test score. A lot of what I think school districts are talking about now and are kind of embedded in the components of the facility master plan. It's not just about student test scores or how they perform at a given level of time, but it's also about creating spaces and creating environments to enable students to nurture the skills that are needed in the 21st century, things like communication, the ability to work together as a team and lead. Those are the kinds of things that are going to be equally important as we move forward into a planning process, as well as student learning measures that are kind of more traditional. So, yeah, there's some research talks about things like daylight and temperature, humidity, ventilation, et cetera. But I would suggest to you that there's a lot more other measures that are going to be equally important going forward than kind of the empirical data.
If I may add to that, it's not always just about the buildings, though, too. And when you start taking a look at the district, it's about the people that use the spaces. It's about the initiatives and that you have in place, a lot of which is going on here in the district right now. I had mentioned School District 62. A little earlier on about when you asked about spaces. And Brad and I had the good fortune of working with Dr. Westerhold, who's this outgoing superintendent over there, through a comprehensive look at the entire school district. And it was sort of a reawakening for them. It encompassed a look and refurbishment, refreshing of their facilities, professional development, technology, really the whole gamut. And they have done, at the district level, have done research on the test scores of the students before and after sort of the implementation of all those ideas. Now, those all happen relatively quickly and all at one time, not in a phased approach, or at least a long-term phased approach. And they did notice dramatic changes in the behavior of the students, as well as the test scores that those students achieved. So I'm sure she'd be happy to share with you those results if you asked. Does that answer your question? Yep, okay.
A lot of information. Thank you. It's still kind of digesting. Also trying to resist the opportunity to jump in prematurely. But if I may, you've seen the facilities. You've been through this a lot of times. When you kind of start to size the effort, how much of this, on our building wise, our reconfiguration, remodel, I mean, I've done this on a residential basis, but sometimes moving walls is easy, sometimes it's hard. How much of this is just flat out construction? And when you're kind of looking at, you're looking at the reconfigurations and the things that you're talking about there to get to that, is that about remodeling and reconfiguring, or is that about wholesale construction projects? And I understand it's not the same answer for every building. I mean, Lincoln may be a different answer, obviously, than Hawthorne. So, I mean, can I cheat and ask that question early?
Well, first off, the answer is yes to all of those things. We don't know. This was just the beginning step, the first step in looking more comprehensively at all of your schools. And so, whether it's maybe there's nothing that needs to be done, maybe some refreshing of finishes, maybe there's additions, maybe there's not. Those are things that happen in the next step. So we're just looking at trying to rate those spaces. I think one of the very intelligent and smart steps that you are taking as a district is looking at the model classroom that Wendy spoke about, and trying to take a look at things, components, elements that go into the space that can enliven it, enrichen the kids' experience, enliven the space, and refresh the space in a way that they aren't, that you're not seeing right now. And the reason why it's so smart is because, this is a grand experiment. This is not, we're going to buy some furniture and throw up some finishes in here, and then all of a sudden you walk away and you just have to live with it, and you like it, great. If you don't, whatever. There are going to be things that work, things that don't work. And the intent here is that we are making adjustments and trying to find the right fit of all those components inside these spaces at each one of the grade levels, so that when the district, and if you desire as leaders of the district to implement some of these changes on a larger scale, you are doing so with a great deal of foresight and intelligence, and what works and what doesn't, so you're not wasting money. So the model classrooms. Yeah, so that's just a small part of, of kind of this next step, this next look. You want to add anything?
Well, and I would also add the parameters of what the budget is, too.
Mm-hmm.
We're not going to go hog wild, knowing certain things aren't possible, too. But I would also say that, I don't know, maybe a good 70 to 80% of the work that we do is renovation. New construction is a rare, wonderful thing. So a lot of the pictures that we showed earlier really are renovated spaces. So walls might move, walls might need to move. It all depends, once we get deeper into it.
And I think it's important, and I've said this before, we've been here talking about this stuff, is that optionality, is that idea that, you know, maybe there's some stuff we need to do right now. And, you know, then there's kind of paths that we can go as we go forward. And to Karen's point about phasing, it's, you know, can we have a big impact with a certain set of things, and then we can branch from there? Because if it's just one thing and we're just pulling it down and doing it, you know, I think those plans don't last that long. I mean, the shelf life's not long enough.
That's the power of the master plan. That's what it's all about. To kind of look at things, if you want, in chunks or phases, or bundling things or not, and kind of looking at long-term how you want to implement some of these changes or refresh your spaces. So you hit the definition of kind of a long-range plan right on the head.
One of the things we talked about, these model classrooms, and I guess I'm trying to, I too am trying to figure out the benefit. And so we talked about, you know, maybe having alignment with test scores, which is one piece. I'm also wondering if you've seen any alignment, or if you've gotten feedback on alignment and engagement based off of these model classrooms.
So I should probably add, the way that the whole model classroom, you know, I flashed up 3 little plans very quickly. That was sort of the end result of a process that's been for about a month and a half now, I would say. We started off with a workshop with talking with the teachers, talking about effective learning methods, things that they want to do in their space, and for what percentages of time. What things are they not able to do right now in their space because of limitations? You know, well, they have individual desks, but they're really heavy to move around, so they're not able to reconfigure. Teachers tethered to one spot in the room, all of those types of things. And we then prioritized those issues. So those plans that were developed were with a pretty robust level of information that was gathered relating directly back, and we looked at by grade level. So it was the K through 2 common themes, 3 through 5, and then the middle school themes too. Mm-hmm. Am I answering your question? No?
And I guess what I'm trying to, and you know, thinking as a community member on what's our bang for our buck. And if we cannot tie anything directly back, you know, immediately to test scores, is there increase in engagement, in classroom engagement? And is there any or other pieces that you've seen?
So we plan on, there's a list of questions that we want to ask, and some of it is, you know, qualitative, and some of it's quantitative, and it can even go to the number of minutes spent in those identified different modes of learning that they wish that they could do more of. And we'll look at that. You know, information after the fact is great, but it means nothing if you can't compare the before. So we plan on gathering that data before with the teachers and maybe even the students as well, and then you compare it to the after.
I think what I'd like to, if I may just tell you a brief story. We are partners with School District 203 down the road, and we started working with the district on, usually you start with the smaller jobs and you kind of work up to you know, bigger jobs, and we had the opportunity of working on the renovation and additions over at Naperville Central. Because of the size of the assignment, we had the luxury of doing a lot of research, and that's where we first started talking about and implementing model classrooms. And the idea over there. And so we set about doing 3 different model classrooms, experimenting with the furniture, technology, the finishes, and so forth, looking at things in a different way than you typically would in a traditional classroom. And we got it done. We're all jazzed up, all excited, ready to get going, and we couldn't get anybody to use the spaces. And it was disheartening, to say the least, until one math class had to leave their current classroom because they were having some mechanical issues and ventilation issues. They were forced to go into into one of the model classrooms, and from that point on, we couldn't keep them out of those spaces. And when we followed up and did our due diligence in terms of student and teacher feedback, we were able to uncover certain things that made an immediate impact, and not necessarily on test scores, but on the engagement level of the students. And some of those elements were the kinds of finishes that we put on the walls. We used what's called marker board paint. What it did, it got the kids up out of their chairs and push them out to the perimeter of the classroom to get them involved in what was going on, solving problems, so that they weren't doing it individually, they were doing it in groups, and they were doing it by moving around. The other thing was the kinds of furniture that we put in there, the kinds of things that we're experimenting with or looking at implementing in the model classrooms that we're proposing over here. And we hear that same story time and time again. Some of those spaces, one of the things that kind of grabs my heart as far as the displaying story goes, is a student that went up to Dr. Westerhold after we got finished with one of the buildings that we did for them, and she pulled the superintendent. The student pulled the superintendent aside, and she was just so excited. A student that never showed any kind of interest whatsoever in her educational experience in the school. And she pulled the superintendent aside on the first day, and was just so energized and excited to be there. She looked at Dr. Westerhold and said, "I can't believe you made this for me." And that student, is one of those students that are now higher achievers in that particular school. So, it happens on a bigger scale as far as classrooms go, but it also happens with individual students. I would venture to guess that if we went out and we started asking the teachers that are using the spaces that we're constructing for them and designing for them, you'd probably hear very similar stories on one level or another.
When you did were you doing the model classroom, you're focusing on learning spaces. But there's kind of a process here where you would deal with campus context first, and then facility configuration after that, and then learning spaces. Is that right?
Well, I think if I understand your question correctly, I think it's not one thing or the other, and they don't follow in sequence. When you look at, when you're assessing and rating, each facility, you're doing all of those at the same time, each one of those categories. When you're designing, you're thinking about all of those things and designing for all of those different categories at the same time.
But I guess what I'm saying is you wouldn't reconfigure learning spaces until you've decided you're done with significant campus context changes or facility configuration changes. You're going from the general to the specific. And so it's kind of you're looking at the end spot by doing these model classrooms.
I think I'll turn over to Brad, but
I'm trying to get a handle on this, because we're focused on the campus. I mean, there's these three levels of analysis of the buildings, but the classroom is really just focusing on the last part of a development.
The last part, but probably the most important part, where students learned. I think there was 450 classrooms throughout the district. So when we get into and developing the campus or the individual building master plan, we're going to be looking at all three of those components in tandem. We're not going to look at one and then the other. They all are variables and challenges that we have to resolve and make a recommendation for the future. The model classroom concept really came out of a question that the district office was getting from their foundation, from the educational foundation. So I believe Chris and did you call? Yeah, Frank, you called me, right, about the grants. They were getting grant requests from teachers to buy new furniture, and there was, what is the kind of furniture we should be buying? And we came up with the idea of kind of testing 3 model classrooms with teachers that were willing to do it, so that the feedback that we were getting from teachers and students before those were completed, and how that feedback was changing and the learning opportunities were changing within the classroom after those models were completed, could then feed into the master planning concepts on a school-by-school basis, a classroom-by-classroom basis, to become kind of a standard or a prototype for how furniture can change, how technology can be modified within the classroom, how finishes can be complemented or modified to support that entire process. So it's really a piece of an overall master plan focusing on furniture, finishes, and technology that can be, transformed across all levels of the building as one component of the overall master plan. So this was a unique way to kind of use the Naperville model to test out with actual students and teachers in your district what works and what doesn't work before we begin thinking about how to launch it over a bigger picture.
This is more of a question for Dave and staff. How, if we're going to have three model classrooms distributed, I'm sorry, where are they going to be? They're going to be, have the schools been decided where they're going to be?
Fisher, Lincoln, and Bryan.
Okay. How are we going to get all the different schools to experience it on a meaningful level without moving kids around, being real disruptive of their weeks? I assume that's what we want to do, is get the most depth of feedback from a variety of communities, but obviously they don't move around. So I'm just wondering how that would work.
Well, I don't, we would have, if we had more money available to us, we would have probably experimented with several more classrooms across the district so that we could have tested multiple prototypes and various types of technologies and arrangements of physical space, but that just wasn't possible. So, obviously people will go to grade level meetings. There will be building visits, formal and informal. I mean, there's a lot of things we can arrange, but really we're going to use the feedback predominantly from the teachers and students in the classrooms that are affected to try to learn from that. It's not, but what we hope will happen in the future is, obviously, as they talked about, we can incorporate this into our long-range planning, but we also can be a little bit more targeted with grant requests and donations and other things like that throughout time. So we do want to learn from this and expand out in whatever way possible. But to directly answer the question you asked about how many different kids could experience or how does this branch out to the other buildings, that's not going to be really happening to a great extent.
Thank you. And the other thing is there it seems like there's a cost relationship as we work down up this hierarchy or down this hierarchy with campus facility and learning spaces. And the broader we start, the more grand the plan is with the campus. And once we make a determination not to address a campus issue, it's really, there's no going back. You don't go back upstream. You basically deal with the campus that you have established and you do the others dependent, right? Is that a fair way of looking at it, or is that limiting?
Well, I think, as I go back to what I talked about at the beginning, the value of having a plan, having a vision. The three classrooms we're looking at now are intended to inform what goes into that master plan on across that school, across all the individual schools, across all the different instructional spaces within the school district. I don't know, but I don't technically understand kind of if you don't do it now, you can't go back, but that's kind of, the master plan is going to be very dynamic. You can choose which elements you want to do based on a whole variety of things, based on, the impact on student learning. It could be based on what the community priorities are. It could be what you hear in Focus 205. It could be based on funding ability. That's probably maybe should be number one, right? That's the value of having a long-range plan that you, as a school district and as a school board, get to decide how you want to make the investment in time and resources and have the biggest impact on the most students. The model classrooms are intended to test and inform not only the finishes, but the furniture and the technology that best align with what your teachers and school leaders want to incorporate into the overall plan going forward. So the long-range plan will give you lots of choices. Doesn't mean you have to do, if you don't have something initially, it doesn't mean you can't go back.
I mean, will it have A, B choices on individual sites? I mean, is that typically something you see in a master plan, or is it, yes, no on each facility?
That's why the district-wide planning issues, which are kind of outgrowths of the Focus 205 process, are going to be important considerations in developing the plan, because it's going to help inform what you do on a building level basis. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Else? Okay, thanks
All right,
very much.
thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we have approval of board meeting minutes. Are there any proposed changes to April 26th or May 10th, 2016 meeting minutes? Okay, hearing none, the minutes will stand as presented. Action on closed session items. Okay, this is negotiations for memorandum of agreement. I'll make the motion. I move that the Board of Education approve the memorandum of agreement between Elmhurst Community Unit School District 205 and the Elmhurst Teachers Council Local 571 American Federation of Teachers as presented. Is there a second? Okay, moved by me, seconded by Jim. Any discussion?
Yeah. Can we just have just a brief recall of what that is, and what we're voting on for that?
The last round of negotiations, there was a proposal put forward to the negotiating team that originated at the high school to change the format for how we handle collaboration time at the high school. Earlier this school year, after we tried that for a while, there was some thinking that maybe it wasn't working as well as people had hoped, and an interest was expressed to go back to a model that included late arrivals almost every Wednesday. And also a question about the possibility of having more time for collaboration as a part of that. The administration indicated it would support that, but that it would need to come through an MOA process because of the fact that it had been negotiated in the contract. And so the Elmhurst Teachers Councils did surveys of teachers at the high school. They did surveys of teachers in the district to garner, to gather some type of information about where the teacher stood. We used that information and are proceeding with the recommendation not only to go back to the previous model, but also to add some time to the elementary and middle school, because those grade levels actually probably are the ones that are most challenged for collaborative time. Additionally, as this conversation was unfolding, information came to us that many students at the high school were very interested in returning to the previous model. That Wednesday late start in the middle of the week helped them for kids at work, for kids that were involved in activities, for kids that needed to catch up on homework, for kids that were sleep deprived. So there were a lot of factors that went into it, but generally speaking, after we got into studying the subtleties of it, we also had to try to arrange bus times that would work. And so that there were some adjustments to the starting times. So they did get pushed back a little bit in a couple cases, probably a little bit more than is ideal, but we are also recapturing a lot of instructional time by analyzing and scrutinizing how we use time during the school day. For example, how often we take teachers out of class, how often we take students out of class. So we actually think when it's all said and done, because of the various different work we're doing in other areas, that we'll actually probably have more instructional time that we recapture than we actually lose. And Jim did some of the specific work with the Elmhurst Teachers Council and the various entities to actually put the agreement together. So I kind of gave you a big picture version. Jim, did you want to add to that at all?
I don't think so.
Thank you, Jim. Is that good? Is that fine?
Yes, thank you. And so if I just kind of recall, this process from the high school, we're going back to every week. For the middle school and elementary school, it is the same as it was the prior year, once a month, with the addition of 20 minutes. Approximately.
Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
For the sake of discussion, first of all, I applaud going back to weekly late arrivals at the high school. From a student's perspective, last 4 or 5 years, every student at York High School I've spoken to says something like, I couldn't get through the week without late arrival Wednesdays. So I absolutely applaud, I thank everybody who started this process to go back to late arrivals once a week at the high school. Now, the pattern I've seen as far as the late arrival at middle schools and elementary, when, if you recall, a few years ago we talked about three-tiered busing, and that would encompass, that would have required a later start time at the elementary schools. And we heard quite a bit about a late arrival or a later start time at the elementary school, that for dual income families, that didn't quite work out. The board is hearing the same kind of thing about once a month late arrivals, especially because it's moved out to 10 o'clock. So why don't I just ask right now, what has been done to accommodate those working families in this plan?
We have, we're planning for the ability for us to have supervision for students at the schools beginning at the same time that students are accustomed to arriving this year, to help alleviate that concern. So hopefully it will be minimized, and certainly we understand that some families it will be more difficult than others, and we did try to weigh some of those factors, but we did, so we're trying to accommodate that, but we also think that this is an important part of our work that we need to do with ELA curriculum, assessments, all the various different work that we're doing with technology, and all of that work. We had to take a lot of time this year to do work developing district level assessments, and our buildings are really crying out for more time for their teachers to be able to work together to implement their school improvement plans.
Let me ask a few things for clarification. So first of all, late arrival, once a month late arrivals at elementary and middle schools start at what time this year, this past year? What time are kids dropped off to school? Yeah, what time are kids dropped off at school?
9:15.
9:15. So what you're saying is, in the next academic year, parents will have the option, the parents who need to, will have the option to drop their kids off at 9:15. They will have supervision until school starts at 10 o'clock.
Correct.
All right. So can I ask the administration to look into two things over the coming year? One, if we can move that to the regular start, that kids be able to, the feasibility of kids being able to be dropped off at school with supervision at the normal start time the other 4 days a week, or however many days a month that works out to, with one late start per month, and just the feasibility of further easing the burden on our elementary parents. And then 2, to study the possibilities, to look at other districts, to study the feasibility of, for the elementary level, an early dismissal. When we went to, a few years ago when we started the once a month late arrival, I did hear from many parents saying, you know, I'm going to miss the early dismissal because there's so many, it's one, easier for my child care, as we heard in public comment tonight, and 2, for the households that have a stay-at-home parent, they say that's actually a very useful time for doctor's appointments, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I just want to ask you to look into that during the coming year and the pros and cons of that. Also, I absolutely hear what you're saying about all of the different new laws that we have to comply with, all of the teacher education that entails, that the benefits of teacher collaboration and all the benefits time used properly, that can have for enhanced learning for our kids, and that if we have time once a month to do that before school, we can avoid pulling out teachers as often as we do. Because I think as a parent, you know, every parent knows a day with a substitute is different than the day with your classroom teacher. And that is valuable time if we can preserve our full-time classroom teachers in their classrooms. So those are my requests.
Yes, we can certainly do that, definitely.
To mirror that a little bit, I think over the next year, if we can communicate the value of the collaboration time, like what happens during teacher collaboration time, how it helps students, and just, you know, get better at communicating that proactively, that would be helpful. I also want to reiterate that with some of the changes that you want to make during the school day, that you believe the amount of instructional time will be increased even with any change in late start.
Well, I think so.
True, okay.
Well, I think, yeah, we're recapturing more than 20 minutes a month. I can guarantee that.
Okay, thank you.
As long as I'm making requests, let me throw one more in. Can we also look at, during the coming academic year, the possibility of starting our high school, not at the late start time, but later than we do every day? I think some of the top high schools in Illinois have begun a later start every day. The American Academy of Pediatrics has made some very clear recommendations of the benefits of starting adolescents later in the day. They perform better academically. They perform better in sports. There are fewer fatalities due to car accidents. You know, our vision statement says that we are a national leader. Some of the other high schools in the state that are national leaders have already adopted this later start. I'd just like to give it a thorough look, evaluate the pros and cons, and bring it to the board in the coming year with a plan that everybody can agree to, and bring it up for evaluation. I think that completes my list of asks for the night.
That, again, is something that we can do.
Okay.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. That motion passes. Superintendent's consent agenda. We have items A through L. I need a motion.
I move we approve the superintendent's consent agenda, items A through
K, with L being the approval of A through K.
That's fine. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by John, seconded by Jim. Go ahead.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes, it's 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. The motion passes. Superintendent's action items.
Okay, Chris, you want to take these first couple?
The first item is the approval of resolution ascertaining prevailing wage. This is just standard procedure. We do this resolution every year on prevailing wage.
Well.
Yeah.
I move that the Board of Education approve the prevailing wage resolution as presented.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, moved by Margaret, seconded by Jim. Go ahead.
I think there's a phrase, not just a good idea, but it's the law. Yeah, so we do this every year, not because it may or may not be a good idea, but it is the law in the state of Illinois that every school board has to vote to approve the prevailing wage provision in the state of Illinois.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes, it's 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. That motion passes. Item B, approval of resolution to transfer money from the education and operation and maintenance funds to the debt service fund.
This item is in accordance with the accounting program accounting manual that we pay our debt obligations out of the debt service fund. So the transfer from the education fund to the debt service fund is for technology leases and copier leases, and then the transfer out of the operation and maintenance fund is for the debt certificates for the stadium and for this building.
We need a motion.
I move that the Board of Education approve the resolution to transfer money from the Education and Operations and Maintenance funds to the Debt Service Fund for the purpose of payment of technology leases and debt certificates for fiscal year 16.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by John, seconded by Margaret. Any discussion?
This is something else we do every year.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, go ahead.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes, it's 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. The motion passes. Item C. Go ahead.
The next two relate to technology. So Dave, if there's anything you feel you would like to add, but essentially those are part of our, purchases, regularly scheduled budget replacements, et cetera.
Yes, these items are both part of the technology roadmap. We called them out onto the this action item agenda due to the cost, the amount of money that's involved. But if you have any questions about either, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay. I'll make the motion. I move that the Board of Education approve the purchase of an Eaton Blade UPS battery backup system with 1 year of maintenance plus installation and configuration services from CDWG using fiscal 2017 funds not to exceed $35,000 in cost.
I'll second.
Okay. Moved by John. Any discussion? Okay. Go ahead.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. That motion passes. Item D.
I move that the Board of Education approve and authorize the superintendent or the superintendent's designee to replace certain multifunction MFP equipment for school district use, not to exceed $280,000 in purchase price. Enter into a 4-year, $1 buyout, non-bank qualified tax-exempt lease with Wintrust Capital, a division of Wintrust Asset Finance, Inc., pending legal review of lease terms or for certain printer copier equipment for school district use not to exceed $280,000 in purchase price with fees of approximately $750 for annual payments not to exceed $73,000 each in fiscal years 2017 through 2020. Number 3, execute the Wintrust Capital Master Lease Agreement and lease schedule and all ancillary documents to effectuate the transaction. Number 4, execute Konica Minolta Advantage maintenance contract documents delineating per impression charges and responsibilities for supplies, parts, service, and repair of certain printer copier equipment. And 5, enter into a 4-year services agreement with One Touch Midwest Corp. for your copy center services and execute the One Touch Point Services Agreement document. No.
Second.
I second the motion.
Okay, moved by John, seconded by Karen. Any questions for Dave? Okay. Part of the plan.
Maybe just a short
Yeah.
explanation. This is both a purchase and a lease.
Yes, it's replacing actually existing equipment. It's in the district now. We're upgrading the equipment with new copiers and printers for all the schools. And also there is a service agreement with the One Touch Point to run the copy center. They've done that the last 4 years. They also had the best proposal, again, for continuing that service for another 4 years. So there's the copier replacement, there's a service contract, and then the lease for the copiers themselves.
And the lease is a financing vehicle, and we do that because, why?
Because in consultation with the finance superintendent, I mean,
Cheap money, says Mr. Bloom, the chairman of the finance committee. So
yeah. I mean, we do
agree.
purchase some items, like for example, the technology equipment that you approved in the last board meeting was purchased outright. That we've tended to lease the copier equipment as they come up for upgrade.
That's fine.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes, it's 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. The motion passes. We have 4 donations.
Okay, the first one is for Bryan Middle School, PTA, amount of $1,500. This is for an interior signage messaging system near the main entrance of the building.
I move that the Board of Education approve acceptance of the donation from the Bryan School PTA for a digital sign in an amount not to exceed $1,500. This donation is accepted in accordance with Policy 880, Gifts to the District.
I second.
Moved by Karen, seconded by Margaret. Go ahead.
We would like to thank the Bryan School and the PTA and the parents and community for this digital sign. It's going to help everyone going to the school, understand quickly where they need to go for their meetings, and it'll allow the school to recognize students and different activities that are going on and to communicate activities going on at the school. Thank you.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. Motion passes. We have a donation from Jefferson.
I move that the Board of Education approve acceptance of the donation of 10 Chromebooks and Chromebook charging cart to Jefferson School in an amount not to exceed $3,600. This donation is accepted in accordance with Policy 880, gifts to the district.
A second?
Moved by John. Go ahead.
I just want to say thank you very much to the, that was the Dad's Club. The Dad's Club. Once again, it's a great community. Work collaboratively to set a target of where we want to go with the school district and the support that we need. And as always, our community organizations are enormous in helping us reach those destinations, all for the benefit of our kids. It's a great community to live in when that happens.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes. Excuse me. 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. The motion passes. A field donation.
The next two are related to the district efforts to move toward more leveled readers, more student choice, more nonfiction texts, et cetera, all related to the ELA curriculum. So you'll see they have to do with the guided reading, the reading rooms at the 2 schools. The first one is from Field. It is in the amount of $6,500, and it is a donation from the PTA. And it is to, as you see there, to upgrade their guided reading room.
I move that the Board of Education approve acceptance of the donation of guided reading room materials to Field School in an amount not to exceed $6,500. This donation is accepted in accordance with Policy 880, gifts to the district.
I'll second. Go ahead.
Once again, we're thanking the community and specifically Field School for launching their school with literacy and the materials that are required for the helping our students with the guided reading. And so thank you very much to the PTA and the community.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. That passes. Our last donation is from Hawthorne.
Okay, this is $8,550. PTA, this has to do with shelving for the reading room at that school. And I would also like to note, as you see in the donations, where appropriate, the various administrators do screen these. So whether it's Frank Shu, if it's related to facilities, or Dave, if it's related to technology. In the case of the field donation, Michelle. So just kind of want to reiterate that.
I move that the Board of Education approve the acceptance of the donation of custom-made book cabinets to Hawthorne School in an amount not to exceed $8,550. This donation is accepted in accordance with Policy 880, gives to the district.
A second?
Again, thanks to the Hawthorne School PTA for generously getting involved and making their school a great place to be. Thank you very much.
Mr. McDonough?
Yes.
Dr. Harrell?
Yes.
Mrs. Stufen?
Yes.
Mr. Bloom?
Yes.
Mr. Collins?
Yes.
Mrs. Ebner?
Yes, 6 ayes, no nays, 1 absent. Motion passes. Moving to Freedom of Information Act requests.
Okay, there are 2, one regarding student data, which was granted, one regarding specific work projects in the district, which was granted. Before we move on, I'd also like to take the opportunity to thank the foundation for its generosity in supporting the model classroom project. Also want to mention that the approval of the Churchville logo will be on the June board agenda. And as to some of your questions, yes, we will phase things out, et cetera, et cetera. We don't anticipate any major things like redoing gym floors and those types of things. So, and then last night at the Finance Committee meeting, we discussed some strategies for allocating resources to support improving student achievement, and a little more specificity at the June board meeting when the Finance Committee reports out on that. So that's it.
Board communications. Okay. We have upcoming meetings. Thursday, June 9th, Learning and Teaching Committee meeting, 6:15 p.m. Monday, June 13th, Special Board of Education meeting, 6 o'clock. Tuesday, June 14th, Board of Education meeting, 7:30 p.m. Thursday, June 23rd, Special Board of Education meeting, 6 p.m. And July 19th, Board of Education meeting, 7:30 p.m. Okay. We reached the end of the agenda. The meeting's adjourned.